I'm tired of it. Honestly, every single season, I see people completely give up in fantasy football. The morale is low, but every single season, we see a few players that nobody knows of that absolutely pop off down the stretch and are the reason we win fantasy football leagues. It is never too late. And we all want that player and those players to be on our team. So that's exactly what I'm going to give you guys in this video of all the players to stash that will win you a league, starting out with Alec Pierce in the priority tier of guys. If they're available for you, they should be your #1 priority. AD Mitchell just got traded to the Jets. It solidifies the Colts' trust in Alec Pierce, and he is going to be a top target guy. We can also solidify being a fantasy football manager that everybody is chasing, wondering how they keep stacking up wins and keep doing so amazing. If you want to be that and you want to hold that trophy at the end of the year, consider hitting that subscribe button and joining the rest of us. And don't forget to drop a like so you guys can remember this moment right where it started. Right after that, you can go get Theo Johnson next up in our priority list. He has been a top target earner for Jackson Dart ever since he has became the starter, averaging 6 targets per game. Troy Franklin also was on this list for a very long time. Just had a great game last week versus the Raiders. He is a top guy. Christian Watson as well, with the injuries that these Packers wide receivers are dealing with. He is a guy we can stash. He's been in previous weeks. Trey Tucker is still somebody we are stashing. I know he had a very bad game last week. The other day, Riley Moss is a very good corner. It was never a good situation for him to begin with. Mason Taylor still, I know, hasn't done a ton. He's still a guy that we need to be rostering and stashing. But now that we've covered our bases with the priority guys, if you can't get them, the sneaky true league winners are in this part of the video. The winning stashes for week 10 are going to start with Tyler Lockett. Yes, old man Tyler Lockett. Getting released by the Seahawks might have actually been a good thing, and I'll explain to you why. You look at Thursday night's game versus the Broncos. To be fair, this is one of the best defenses in restricting fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They're one of the best defenses in the league. He dropped 9.4 fantasy points. Now, that is pretty decent, but what's more important is that he ran the second most routes right behind Trey Tucker at 28 in his second game with the team. Now, you see in week 9, his first game, he only played 30% of the snaps. That jumped to 57% in week 10. There are no signs of that slowing down or regressing at all. Actually, I think it's the opposite with Jacoby Myers leaving this team. Number one, a few things. It opens up a ton of targets. He's no longer there, obviously. Number two, it opens up the slot wide receiver role, which is exactly the role that Tyler Lockett fills 1-for-1. He is a slot wide receiver. He has always been a slot wide receiver, and we know the wide receivers that play in that part of the field and that aspect of the offense typically have a higher route run rate per game, and they see a higher target share because of it, because their average depth of target is lower. So if your offensive line is complete booty cheeks and made of toothpicks, you don't need to run super deep routes because they won't develop. That's why the slot guys do really well, but this is also very good because not only does he join Geno Smith, a quarterback that he played with for a very long time in Seattle, he's also joining Pete Carroll, who he played under for a very, very long time. So that's why all of a sudden he's getting all this usage. It's just like middle school basketball. The coach has favorites, and it's kind of the same thing in the NFL. So the Raiders get the #1 best matchup on top of that in week 11 versus the Cowboys. They are allowing over 40 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, some of the most yards. We know how positive that matchup is. We don't have to go too deep into it. So he is a stash, just like our next guy on this list, who everybody has forgotten about. It is Cedric Tillman. He's slated to make his return off of IR this week for the Browns against the Jets. We also are not going to have Isaiah Bond. He's trending towards missing this game, which is even better for him. I don't expect him to be at a full snap share this week, though, but what we do know is I wouldn't start Cedric Tillman this week, especially considering the game environment and the weather. It is completely disgusting. I broke down every single matchup with the weather, with the sportsbook projections, with the cornerback to wide receiver matchup grades, all in one video I posted earlier in the week. I'll pin it in the description. I really do suggest you guys check that out. It has timestamps, very easy watch. But Tillman, in his 2 healthy games this year, was the most targeted wide receiver for the Browns at 15 total in those 2 weeks. Now, that was with Joe Flacco. We know Joe Flacco is elite pass volume. That's just what he is. But this is another case of a slot wide receiver boost. These guys run shorter routes. Again, we talked about it earlier. They typically have a higher target rate. And again, if your offense is terrible, like the Browns is, that's better for the team. So they have one of the most favorable rest of season schedules against very soft defenses that do allow a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers for the rest of the year. So yes, this offense as a whole isn't good. Dylan Gabriel isn't great. He's not a very accurate quarterback, and they don't sustain really long drives. But that matters a lot less. Number one, when you're a slot wide receiver, we talk about this all the time. And number two, Gabriel does have decent pass volume, so it does kind of make up for that a little bit. So stash him before the rest of your league mates do, just like Isaiah Likely, who in my opinion, completely primed for a late season breakout. Not betting everything on it. It's not a coincidence that Isaiah Likely has his best game of the year when Lamar Jackson comes back and plays his first game in week 9. Now, yes, it was against a non-existent Dolphins defense. We do have to take that into account, but it was Lamar Jackson's first game, and he did target him on a higher percentage of dropbacks than Cooper Rush was, than Tyler Huntley was. And if you look into every single game that these two guys, Lamar Jackson and Isaiah Likely, played together in 2024 last year, he totaled 477 yards, 58 targets, 6 touchdowns, and he had an increased usage rate in the playoffs. These are all good signs for Isaiah Likely. Now, the one downside is obviously that he's playing alongside Mark Andrews. He is never going to go away, but we've seen last year and even so far this year, he is not a volume tight end. He will get used. He'll probably get targeted in the red zone. The good news is Lamar Jackson targets tight ends 33% of the time in the red zone, which is very good for him and Isaiah Likely. But Isaiah Likely is going to be the target, the volume tight end, and the Ravens do have one of the most positive schedules to finish out the rest of the year from week 13 on in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. They get the Bengals twice in that mix, who are averaging over 30 fantasy points allowed to wide receivers per game, a ton of yards, the number one most yards at 426 per game. You can expect Lamar Jackson with him back. Isaiah Likely's value is going to skyrocket. And speaking of the Bengals, so many people have gone through and dropped Joe Burrow, rostered in under 50% of leagues. I understand he's been injured for a long time. It was serious, but all of the signs are pointing towards him making a return in December this year. So if you can't stash him on your IR slot and he's out there, definitely check right now, but he's free. And here's why you need to do that as soon as possible. Number one, they get one of the best fantasy football playoff schedules against the Ravens, Dolphins, and Cardinals. That is insane. Number two, we know how bad this defense is. They're allowing so many points, so many everythings to opposing offenses. So the Bengals need to score 40 plus points a game to even stay in contention. That's going to mean a lot more offense for Joe Burrow. We know he's a good quarterback. And number three, he's also playing with some of the best weapons in the entire NFL. Not much needs to be said here on why Joe Burrow is a good pickup. Worst case scenario, he doesn't play. You waste the IR slot on him. But a guy that has come back from injury is JJ McCarthy, and we talked about him last week, so I will be relatively quick here. This might be your last chance to go pick him up and stash him, though. He's rostered in just about 30% of leagues. It did spike from last week, but the reason here is they get a matchup against the Ravens this week, followed by the Bears right after that. Both top 5 defenses in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks and general success to offenses. I don't think he's going to be that strong. Like, he definitely is a risky start this week, despite the really good matchups, because we don't exactly know how much pass volume he's going to have. He does have rushing upside, but again, like Joe Burrow, one of the best supporting casts in the NFL with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and obviously everybody else, but one of the best fantasy playoff schedules as well. He gets the Cowboys, Giants, and Lions, all top 10 in yards allowed. Even if you don't need a quarterback personally, I would suggest picking him up. Maybe after a couple weeks, these good matchups against the Bears and the Ravens this week, sell him, trade him, see what you can get for him for somebody that needs a quarterback if you're in a 2 QB league as well. But player values are changing really fast, so it is going to be tough to trade him. Just know I made a trade target video a couple of days ago. You guys can definitely go watch that. Again, it has timestamps throughout the whole thing, so it's a very easy watch. I'll pin it in the description for you guys to go check out. But Devin Neal is also a guy we need to check out and see if he's on our waiver wire. With Alvin Kamara doing what he is, or really not doing what he should be, he is a stash, especially through their bye week, which is coming. I'll get to that in a second. But Kamara is averaging 6 carries per game. That's not targets. That's not yards per carry. 6 carries per game over the last 2 weeks and 2.9 yards per carry. That is absolutely terrible. If you look at the chart, everything is in red. And considering his age and how far this team is away from playoff contention, you can consider that he is not going to get much better. He's not going to have that much more fantasy value. Now, I definitely would not be dropping Alvin Kamara. I do think there is a world where people are just overreacting a bit too much, but he is not a workhorse running back like he used to be. And you look at this week's matchup versus the Panthers, it is a positive one, and he is questionable coming into this matchup. So if he does miss for whatever reason with his ankle injury, Devin Neal is a top running back add. Again, if he does miss, I'm not starting Devin Neal. There's still a lot of question marks to be answered, but he is really the only running back on this active roster. They have Audric Estime, but he's going to need to be brought up for the practice squad. I mean, his snaps have been jumping since week 6 when he came into this offense, and the Saints do have their bye week in week 11, which I talked about earlier. We see every single year, running backs, wide receivers, whatever it is, they get an increase and spike in usage and snaps after that bye week because the team has a chance to sit back and really tighten their game plan. That's why rookies get more involved. They drafted him for a reason. So this could be a situation where we see him getting 7+ carries a game, a couple touches, maybe 30, 40, 50% of the snaps on average, and it is one of the more favorable rest of season schedules and fantasy points allowed to running backs for the Carolina Panthers, which is going to bode well a little bit for him. But we can also go through and stash Jalen Coker. Now, he hasn't done much, really anything, since coming off of IR, very serious injury. He came back in week 7, but he is still working up to a full snap share, and his saving grace right now is just that Ted McMillan picked up a hamstring injury. That just happened. The coaches are concerned that there is a chance he does not play in week 10 in a very positive matchup versus the Saints. This is the last chance that Jalen Coker has to produce. He's done nothing so far this year. He's had very bad matchups. He gets a very bad one in week 11 too, where we're not going to be even close to starting him. But if Ted McMillan does miss, this is his chance. He's a slot wide receiver. We've talked about how positive that is for offenses. But if he can't, maybe it's just over for him. And if you have the space on your bench, definitely go do that for this week just in case. But that's going to finish out this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate, seriously, all the love you guys have been showing on these videos. I love seeing you guys in the comments. Thank you guys so much for the support. I will see you in the next one coming soon. All glory to the man above.